Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about understand your brain and master your life. Your brain is constantly processing a flood of information, but it doesn't treat everything equally. It picks and chooses what to pay attention to, what to ignore, what to highlight, and what to dim. This mechanism, focus, is one of the most powerful tools your brain possesses. And here's the truth most people don't realize. You have far more control over your focus than you think. And that focus, when sharpened and directed, becomes the foundation upon which your future is built. Every second of every day, your mind is receiving data from the world around you. Sounds, colors, conversations, screens, movement, feelings. But your conscious mind can only handle a limited amount of this input at once. So it filters, selects, and zeroes in on what it believes matters most. This is your focus at work. It acts like a flashlight in a dark room. You shine it on what you want to see. Everything else might still be there, but it fades into the background. The question is, what are you choosing to shine your light on? What you focus on determines how you feel, how you think, and ultimately what you do. Focus shapes your perception, and perception shapes your reality. If you focus on problems, your brain becomes problem-oriented. If you focus on growth, it starts seeing opportunity. If you dwell on doubt, it strengthens insecurity. But if you lock onto purpose, your actions begin to align with meaning. This is why two people can face the exact same situation, and one sees failure while the other sees a lesson. It's not the situation that changed, it's the focus. Most people live life reacting to whatever grabs their attention. Notifications, noise, comparison, headlines, distractions. They allow the outside world to hijack their mental spotlight. And when your focus is dictated by randomness, your life starts to feel chaotic, scattered, and drained of direction. You lose time, you lose clarity, you lose power. But when you take back control of your attention, you take back control of your narrative. Training your focus is like training a muscle. It requires awareness, discipline, and repetition. You can't expect your mind to stay sharp if you constantly feed it junk. You can't expect clarity if you never pause to breathe. You can't expect breakthroughs if you're always multitasking. Focus is a choice. A daily decision to narrow the noise and direct your energy toward what actually matters. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every thought deserves your engagement. Selectivity is strength. One of the fastest ways to build laser focus is to set clear intentions. When you wake up, don't ask, what should I do today? Ask, what deserves my attention today? This one shift, a certain result. Then comes the action, the behavior you perform. And finally, there's a reward, which satisfies the craving and sends a signal to your brain. Remember this. This loop, repeated often enough, creates a neurological pathway that becomes easier to follow every time. Eventually, the behavior becomes automatic. That's the birth of a habit. Understanding this cycle is essential if you want to take control of your life. Because once you see how habits are formed, you stop being a passive product of them. You become the architect of them. You realize that every time you repeat a behavior in response to a specific cue, your brain reinforces the connection between them. That's how smoking becomes associated with stress relief. That's how scrolling through your phone becomes a reflex when you're bored. That's how going to the gym becomes a default when you're chasing progress. The pattern isn't random, it's practiced. Most people try to change their lives by attacking the results. They say, I want to lose weight, or I want to stop procrastinating, but they ignore the behaviors that created those results in the first place. Results are just the echo of repeated actions. And repeated actions are driven by the habits your brain has learned to favor. To change the outcome, you have to change the pattern. And to change the pattern, you have to rewrite the loop. Start by identifying the cue. What sets the habit in motion? Is it a time of day, an emotion like anxiety, the presence of a particular person or environment? Once you recognize the trigger, you can intercept it. Then, instead of following the old behavior, you insert a new one. This is the heart of habit change, replacing the action, but keeping the cue and the reward. For example, if you eat junk food when you feel stressed, try taking a short walk or doing deep breathing instead. The cue remains stress, and the reward remains relief. But the action changes. Repetition is where transformation happens. Your brain doesn't care about your intentions. It responds to what you do over and over again. The more frequently you perform a behavior, the more myelin, a fatty substance that strengthens neural connections, wraps around the circuit in your brain. That's what makes the behavior easier, faster, and more automatic. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Doing something small every day is more powerful than doing something big once in a while. Repetition builds structure. Repetition builds identity. Rewards reinforce the behavior. Your brain is wired to repeat what feels good or satisfying. That's why you must reward yourself immediately after the new behavior, especially in the early stages. The reward doesn't have to be extravagant. It can be as simple as a moment of pride, a smile, or checking a box. The point is to signal to your brain, this action matters. This feels good. Do it again. Over time, the behavior becomes internalized, and the external reward becomes less necessary. The habit sustains itself because it aligns with who you are becoming. When you understand that habits are not mystical forces, but structured patterns of cue, action, and reward, you gain control. You no longer have to wonder why you can't stop doing something or why new routines don't stick. You just have to focus on the loop, repeat the process, and reinforce the identity you want to embody. Because every habit you build is a vote for the person you are becoming, and your brain is casting those votes with every repeated action. Stress is one of the most misunderstood forces in life. We're taught to fear it, avoid it, and treat it like a threat to our well-being. But what if stress wasn't the enemy? What if instead of being a danger to escape, it was a message to listen to? A powerful internal signal that it's time to rise, time to change, time to grow. The human brain evolved not in luxury, but in survival. Stress was never meant to be a punishment. It was designed to sharpen the senses, boost awareness, and prepare you to act. When your body experiences stress, your brain releases a cocktail of hormones and neurotransmitters, adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, that elevate your focus, raise your energy, and heighten your readiness to face challenges. That physical response isn't weakness. It's your system activating its highest performance state. It's your biology calling you to rise to the occasion. Stress in its healthy form is a form of tension, and tension, properly applied, builds strength. Think of how muscles grow. They grow when they are challenged, when they are pushed beyond their comfort zone, when they are torn and rebuilt. The same principle applies to your emotional resilience, your mindset, and your character. The right amount of pressure triggers growth. Without that pressure, you remain stagnant. Without resistance, there's no reason to evolve. The key is not to eliminate stress, but to understand it. Not all stress is created equal. There is toxic stress, chronic, overwhelming, and unmanaged. But there is also productive stress, acute, temporary, and purposeful. The difference lies in how you interpret and respond to it. When you believe stress is harmful, your body processes it differently. Your health suffers, your thinking narrows, your performance declines. But when you see stress as a challenge, as a necessary ingredient for progress, your body responds with strength, your brain becomes more focused, and your endurance increases. This shift in perspective is powerful. When you feel nervous before a presentation, it means you care. When you feel pressure before a big decision, it means the outcome matters. When you're overwhelmed by a new opportunity, it means you're stepping into unfamiliar territory, and that's exactly where growth happens. Discomfort doesn't mean stop. It means you're entering the zone where potential is unlocked. Every breakthrough you've ever had started with a moment of uncertainty. What most people run from is actually what they need most. They avoid the hard conversation. They postpone the difficult decision. They retreat from the workout, the goal, the leap of faith. Not because they're incapable, but because they've been trained to see stress as a warning sign. But in reality, stress is an invitation. It's your mind and body preparing for transformation. The faster your heart beats, the clearer your focus becomes. The tension in your chest, that's not fear trying to stop you. It's energy asking to be used. Learning to manage stress doesn't mean eliminating pressure from your life. It means learning to direct it. It means knowing when to breathe, when to rest, and when to push through. Recovery is just as vital as challenge. But growth never happens in a vacuum of ease. The people who reach new levels are not the ones who avoid stress, but the ones who develop the capacity to carry it, learn from it, and use it. Your brain is plastic, meaning it can change, adapt, and rewire itself. But it needs a reason to do so. That reason often arrives wrapped in stress. It arrives in the form of a deadline, a new responsibility, an unexpected obstacle. Those moments are not setbacks. They are signals. They are your body's way of telling you you're in the right place. You're being stretched. Keep going. Stress, when understood and harnessed, becomes one of your greatest tools for evolution. The brain is the most adaptable organ in the human body. It is not fixed. It is not static, and it does not operate by chance. It evolves, reshapes, and transforms itself based on one powerful principle: repetition. What you do over and over again becomes your wiring. It becomes your reflex. It becomes your reality. Your brain isn't moved by your dreams, intentions, or what you hope will happen. It is shaped by what you actually do, consistently, deliberately, and repeatedly. This concept is called neuroplasticity. It means your brain is constantly forming new neural connections while weakening old ones that are no longer used. Every thought you think, every action you take, every habit you form, it sends a signal to your brain that says, this is important. When repeated enough times, the brain starts to automate it. That thought becomes your default. That action becomes your instinct. That behavior becomes your identity. In other words, you are training your brain whether you realize it or not. The only question is, What are you training it to do? People often wonder why they struggle to break bad habits or build new ones. They have the desire, they make the plan, they set the goals, but they fail to change their behavior. The reason is simple. The brain doesn't respond to what you wish would happen. It responds to evidence. It responds to repetition. Every time you act, you cast a vote for the kind of brain you're building. One act of discipline doesn't make you focused. One act of courage doesn't make you fearless. But repeat those acts day after day, week after week, and you start to reshape the very structure of your mind. Wishing to be confident without speaking up regularly will never rewire your brain for confidence. Wishing to be disciplined without showing up daily and doing the work will never rewire your brain for consistency. Wishing to be calm in chaos without practicing breathing, stillness, and clarity in small moments of pressure will never rewire your brain for peace. The brain demands proof. It asks for action. It requires repetition. Until it sees a behavior over and over again, it will default to the old pattern, the one you've unconsciously trained it to believe is you. This is both the challenge and the opportunity. The challenge is that change doesn't come from a single moment of motivation. It comes from hundreds of tiny, often boring, often unseen repetitions that teach your brain a new pattern. The opportunity is that you can start today, and you can start small. You don't need to overhaul your entire life in a week. You just need to take one small step and repeat it. Repetition is the gateway to transformation. If you want to think differently, act differently. Don't wait for your brain to feel ready. Show it what ready looks like. If you want to be more grateful, practice gratitude even when it doesn't feel natural. If you want to be more focused, create a space of stillness even when distractions scream for attention. If you want to be stronger mentally, face small challenges on purpose. Your brain won't just learn from these actions. It will change because of them. The mistake many people make is waiting for the feeling to show up before taking action. But in reality, the feeling often follows the action. Confidence follows doing hard things. Clarity follows taking the first step. Motivation follows movement. That is how the brain works. It follows the path of repetition, not emotion. It prioritizes patterns, not intentions. So the more often you align your actions with the future you want, the more your brain starts to adapt to support that future. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're simply running a program that you've repeated for years. But the incredible truth is that you can write a new one, not with just words, not with just vision boards, but with repeated action, with deliberate decisions, with patterns that send a signal to your brain that says, this is who I am now. Discipline is often misunderstood. It's viewed as punishment, as limitation, as the force that removes pleasure and imposes discomfort. But that is not discipline. That is a misconception created by short-term thinking. True discipline is not about saying no to everything you enjoy. It is about saying yes, but to the right things, at the right time, for the right reasons. It is not about deprivation. It is about alignment. Discipline is the decision to live in harmony with your purpose, your values, and your vision of the highest version of yourself. The strongest people in the world are not the ones who never feel tempted, tired, or distracted. They are the ones who have trained their minds to act in service of their future self, not just their present feelings. That's what discipline really is. Choosing in the moment what your future self will thank you for. It's recognizing that your energy, your time, and your attention are limited resources. And rather than allowing them to be consumed by impulse or emotion, you direct them toward what truly matters. Think of discipline as the inner compass that always points you back to your mission, even when your environment tries to pull you off course. Life is filled with distractions, with noise, with people and opportunities that demand your attention but don't deserve it. Without discipline, you become reactive. You say yes to everything and end up achieving nothing. But with discipline, you become deliberate. You choose with intention. You decide not based on what's easiest, but based on what's aligned with who you want to become. There is freedom in that alignment. Real freedom isn't doing whatever you want whenever you feel like it. That kind of freedom leads to chaos, inconsistency, and regret. Real freedom is knowing you are living each day with purpose. It's the calm that comes from knowing you are showing up fully, staying consistent, and moving in the direction of your goals. Discipline gives you that freedom because it removes the confusion. It simplifies your choices. It silences the noise. When you are aligned, you don't have to debate whether to quit, delay, or procrastinate. You just act. The truth is, you already practice discipline in many areas of your life. You show up to work when you're tired, you meet deadlines when you'd rather rest, you fulfill responsibilities because you know they matter. What if you redirected that same level of commitment toward your personal evolution, toward your fitness, your learning, your growth, your spiritual well-being? That's where discipline becomes powerful, when it stops being something imposed from outside and becomes something generated from within. Your highest self is not built in moments of comfort. It is forged in moments of discipline. It's created when you say no to short-term pleasure for long-term progress. It's strengthened every time you honor a promise to yourself. And the more consistently you do that, the more confident you become. Not because you never fail, but because you build evidence through action that you can trust yourself. Self-trust is the root of confidence, and discipline is how it is earned. Discipline doesn't remove emotion, it manages it. It doesn't make life rigid, it gives it direction. When you live with discipline, you stop chasing every spark of motivation and start relying on the power of commitment. You need to feel like it, you need to decide it. That decision, repeated often enough, becomes part of your identity. You stop asking, can I do this? And start declaring, this is who I am. The alignment between your daily habits and your ultimate vision is what brings peace. Because when you act out of alignment, even success feels empty. But when you stay disciplined, every step, no matter how small, becomes meaningful. You know you're on the path, you know you're building something real, and you know that you're not being controlled by your circumstances, but by your clarity. That clarity only comes when your choices reflect your core values and when your actions consistently speak the language of your highest potential. Setting goals is easy. Writing them down, visualizing them, dreaming about them, that part doesn't take much effort. Everyone sets goals, everyone has ambitions. But why is it that so many goals remain just that? Distant wishes, never realized. It's because the human mind doesn't operate on desire alone. It operates on structure, on patterns, on systems. You don't rise to the level of your ambition when life tests you. You fall to the level of the systems you've built when no one is watching. Systems are the invisible frameworks behind every sustained success. They are the routines you follow, the habits you repeat, the mindset you operate from, and the environment you create. A goal is a destination, But a system is the road you take to get there. And if the road is broken, unpaved, or leads in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how determined you are, your success will always be limited by the foundation you stand on. The brain is not designed to constantly rely on motivation. Motivation is a temporary spark. It may push you to start, but it cannot be trusted to carry you through. Systems, on the other hand, are dependable. They function when you're tired. They carry you when you lack energy. They make success predictable. A person who sets a goal to be fit but has no structure to their nutrition, no plan for their workouts, no rhythm to their recovery, that person is relying on willpower, and willpower fades. But the person who builds systems, preps meals in advance, sets a training time daily, tracks their progress, that person removes friction, making their actions automatic. When your systems align with your vision, progress becomes a natural outcome. When they don't, you live in a loop of frustration, constantly wanting more, trying harder, pushing harder, but never breaking through. This is why elite performers, high achievers, and leaders don't just think in goals. They think in systems. They ask, what process will get me there? What behavior must be repeated? What structures do I need to put in place so that even on my worst day, my system keeps me moving? It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. It's not about working harder once. It's about creating systems that work harder for you every day. Whether it's waking up early, blocking time for focused work, practicing gratitude, managing digital distractions, or designing an environment that supports focus and well-being, these aren't acts of discipline alone. These are examples of systems in action. They remove decision fatigue, they create momentum, and they reinforce identity. Systems also remove emotion from the equation. Too often, people act based on how they feel. But when you have systems, you act based on what you've built. You don't have to ask, do I feel like doing this today? You just follow the system. That's what gives people an edge, not superhuman willpower, but simple systems executed relentlessly. Systems are also scalable. They are the difference between temporary progress and lifelong mastery. Anyone can achieve something once, but those who succeed consistently, those who evolve, adapt, and continue to grow, they don't rely on a moment of inspiration. They build a structure around themselves that supports success no matter the season, the mood, or the challenge. Think of your habits as the building blocks of your systems. They are small, seemingly insignificant actions that stack over time to create massive impact. You brush your teeth not because it gives you instant results, but because the system of dental hygiene produces health over time. The same applies to mindset, to business, to relationships, to creativity. Systems create rhythm, and rhythm creates results. Systems are also how you protect your energy. They reduce the number of decisions you have to make. They simplify complexity. They give you clarity on what matters most. And they create boundaries to protect your time and mental space. Most importantly, they allow you to focus on the process, not the pressure of the outcome. When you fall in love with the system, you stop obsessing over the finish line and you start becoming the kind of person who lives in alignment with your goals daily. That identity, built brick by brick through your systems, is what sustains success far beyond any moment of inspiration or peak of motivation